Yet another tough text from Luke's Gospel. It must be Sunday. Last Sunday we heard about a dishonest steward who cooked the books. Jesus reminds us that we cannot serve both God and mammon. Earlier he told a parable about a rich fool, a successful farmer who decides to tear down his barns and build bigger barns to store his bumper harvest. But that very night, he has a heart attack. He can't take it with him. What is it with Luke's gospel? Harping on the dangers of wealth and possessions week after week. And this week, we get this parable of rich man, poor man. Is it really your job, Luke, to afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted? It would seem so. For you begin your gospel with Mary's solo Magnificat. In chapter 1, this pregnant girl sings of the poor being raised up and the rich being sent away empty. And now, in chapter 16, we get a tale of fortunes reversed. Well, for us in the developed world, we can't help but hear this story with a twinge of guilt and discomfort, because none of this is news. We know all about the widening gap between the haves and the have-nots, the growing inequality in our society. We know about the people of Pakistan, millions flooded out, and those sleeping on the streets of our city. We know the plight of refugees and migrants, and the potential humanitarian crisis looming if those grain ships don't safely leave from the port of Odessa. What is Luke telling us? He's saying God didn't make the world this way, and God doesn't want the world this way, and asks us to do something about it. He'd tell the United Nations to forget those endless study papers and the endless wringing of hands. He'd urge us immediately to provide food and shelter and water and medicine, to share the wealth, to love our neighbors. Luke would warn us about ignoring Lazarus at the gate. For the rich man, it was too late. The day of reckoning had come. He has no name. Tradition calls him Dives. Dives from the Latin meaning wealthy. Cocooned, isolated in his affluent bubble of luxury, Dives was indifferent. Even to come in and out of his splendid villa meant to step on or step over this poor beggar at the gate. Lazarus was literally the doormat. It sounds grimly familiar. But then the great reversal. The tables are turned. The rich man dies, tormented, lost in agony. The poor beggar goes to a place of honor. Lazarus gets to rest in the bosom of Abraham, Israel's founding patriarch. But the nameless rich man can't even forward an email warning his relatives about what's in store. You see, there's a great gap. There's a chasm. And what good would it do anyway? All Jews are familiar with the teachings of Moses and the prophets. The Hebrew Scriptures clearly lay out the demands of justice and fairness for the whole community. We know this. But some take no notice, rejecting the plain meaning of the Scriptures. Did Dives go to hell because he was rich? Or because he was coldly indifferent? And why did Lazarus go to paradise? Because he was poor? No. The poor have no corner on virtue. Perhaps he was simply poor in spirit, as Jesus puts it, aware of his reliance on God. It's a strange, unsettling story, illustrating the poverty of riches and the hell of lonely, isolated, cocooned affluence. And what is Luke's intention in this cautionary tale? To alert us to the responsibility of riches, especially for those of us who live in the developed world, warning us that the pursuit of the good life in all its indulgence and the callous neglect of Lazarus distances us from God to a hellish degree. I've seen this. You've seen this. Even the Beatles warned us, money can't buy you love. Is Jesus opposed to wealth and possessions? No. Wealth is good. It's worthwhile, it's valuable, it's positive. But because we tend to assume it is ours, it can be problematic. Avarice, greed, the love of money, the root of all evils, says the letter of Timothy. Clayton read this morning. Those who want to be rich fall into temptation and are trapped by many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin. Haven't we often seen this? Jesus teaches that wealth of any sort is a gift, not a reward. Wealth is not a sign of God's favor, nor is poverty a sign of God's disfavor. Like the Queen, we come into this world with no assets, and we leave with no assets. Any amount of wealth, large or small, is only on loan. For maybe 70, 80, 90 years, perhaps 96 years like Queen Elizabeth, we are loaned time, talents, resources, assets. These do not belong to us. Wealth is always a means. It's not an end in itself. And the greater the wealth, says Jesus, the greater the expectation, the greater the responsibility. To whom much is given, much is expected, he says. The Queen knew that text. To whom much is given, much is expected. Not only of monarchs and of individuals, but of communities and societies. We're called to be good stewards of our resources, to share justly for the sake of God's peaceable kingdom. Some things, of course, are beyond price, aren't they? Faith, love, endurance, gentleness, goodness, generosity of spirit. Priceless. Do you know Mary Jo Leddy, the Toronto nun and spiritual writer? She's the founder of Romero House, downtown, the refuge house for refugees. She insists that all mature Christians must finally come to say, it's enough. I have enough. I am enough. Life is enough. Let's ponder that this week in our prayers. It's enough. I have enough. I am enough. With all my heart, I thank you.